Let's start out with a little story today. So I find myself in the theater and I'm going to do a little two-channel work, right? I want to listen to some of these speakers. I'm going to work on a review, and lo and behold, the amplifier that I typically use has died. Yeah, it was just straight up dead. Plugged it in and nothing was happening. So what do? I audible, I go out and I grab another amplifier from the closet, and I pulled out probably what might not be considered to be a high-end kind of amp, but I just needed to get something working just to kind of get me through. I had some stuff I needed to do, and I thought, okay, why not? It's maybe only 50 watts by 2, and it's AB at least, but you know, we'll see what happens. Plug it in, and tell you what, it was probably the worst listening experience I've had in memorable history. It was bad. I mean, it was horrible. You know, there was no stereo imaging. I mean, there was a little bit, but it was mostly like there's some sounds on the right channel and sounds on the left channel, but they didn't create any kind of stereo image. The sound stage was horrible. It's like it didn't even exist. And this is with the exact same system, the same speakers, nothing moved, the same source, same everything, except the amplification. And that got me thinking. I knew that every component was important, and they all are, but I didn't realize that an amplifier could be that bad. And this thing was horrible. You know, I went and grabbed another amp, put it in the same spot, and you know what? Bam, things were back to normal-ish, right? So that got me thinking, what's the right amplifier for me? You know, what really do I need to look for? Well, I reached out to my friends at Acurus, and they sent over their A2002, which is a little bit higher end, a little notch above the stuff that I typically have sitting around for my two-channel listening, so I could give that a listen and see if that's something that would work for me. And you know, if I could really tell a difference in a way that's positive as compared to that negative experience that I had with the, I'm not going to call out the name of it, amplifier. So, you know, I got this guy in, and we're going to take a look at that today and see, you know, a little bit about the amp, learn about it, and what kind of experience I have installing a higher end amp than I'm typically used to dealing with. To get started, let's take a look at the amp itself and see what features it's bringing to the table. Out of the gate, let's go ahead and talk about power rating. Everybody needs to know how much juice the amplifier is going to put out. Now, this is a stereo amp, so 2 channels, so you got left and right in, left and right out, so to speak. And it does 200 watts per channel into 8 ohms, 300 watts into 4 ohms, and that's both channels driven. Total harmonic distortion is 0.03 at 200 watts, 8 ohms, or less than that rather, and then less than 0.05% at 300 watts into 4 ohms. For folks that really like to get into the specs, the damping factor is 500, and that's 8 ohms at 50 hertz, and power consumption is 23 watts idle, but if you put it into standby mode, it's less than 1 watt. The back of the unit's pretty straightforward. You've got your RCA left and right in. These are gold plated. Now, there are no XLR ends. I know a lot of you guys out there want your XLR, and I like that too. And I hear that maybe in the future that'll be added, but today RCA's is the way it is. On the speaker side, you've got your left and right outputs, and those are 5-way binding posts, and those will accept banana plugs, which I really appreciate. I've done some reviews on some other high-end equipment, and they only allow spade connectors, and that's cool, but man, I really do like just being able to plug in and out. And maybe it's because I change gear so much, and for others that might not be as important, but I really appreciate being able to use the termination of my own choice, right? You've also got 3 other ports back there that are important. You've got a 12-volt trigger, super cool. Not all 2-channel devices have that. You've also got RS-232 in and Ethernet in. One thing that's to note is that this is part of the Acurus brand. So Indie Audio Labs has Acurus and ARAGON, and ARAGON is more of their 2-channel stuff, like the 2-channel listening purist kind of piece. And then if you look at Acurus, you see that more often in home theater because they've got their pre-pros on that side of the house, the Act 4, the Muse, and those devices. This one is from Acurus, and so they've included what I consider to be kind of the Acurus technology of integration with control systems. So there's a RS-232 and Ethernet, as I said, and that allows this unit to be controlled by pretty much anything you can get a driver for. And today, all of the big companies are covered. So your Savants and your Control4s and your Crestrons, et cetera, right? So this thing can integrate with your home and a control system to a degree that you really don't see in a lot of two-channel equipment. And that's super, super cool. So if you want to be able to come into your home and say, device, play my music, well, you can do that, and you can integrate that with pretty much anything. If you want to tell a smart speaker or a smart device to play your high-end music through your high-end system and set a scene where it lowers your blinds and changes the hue of the color and spins up whatever device you need to spin up, you can do that. And this amplifier will integrate right in with that system, which I really, really appreciate. Now, I'm not going to go to the level in this video of doing that kind of integration and setup, but I do have plans to do some of that stuff down the line as I think about building, you know, well, I mean, I guess the bigger picture is that hopefully we'll be moving in the not too distant future, and we're going to go to a place where we'll be able to do that kind of stuff from scratch and have a more dedicated home theater, but then have technology throughout the whole house and build a lot of video content around that. And man, I love that Acurus can integrate into these kinds of systems. It's absolutely mind-blowing what you can do when you have an IP-enabled device. And when you've got an IP-enabled high-end two-channel amplifier, that's kind of like the cherry on top from that kind of flexibility. So getting back to the review part of this video, I took the A2002 and I integrated that into my test environment and gave it a listen. And the stack that I was using was my TouchStream streamer, which is a Roon endpoint. And man, Roon, I love it. I can't say enough of how Roon has changed the way that I listen to music. So I've got that piped straight into a Shitfreya Plus, from there down to the amplifier, and then out to my Stark Sound towers. Now, I didn't use a subwoofer for the listening tests. I just used the two towers. And you know, I think that's typically what you'll see a lot of two-channel listeners do. They won't go into the crossovers and subs and that kind of stuff. So I kept this in a very simple left-right amplifier, preamp, and source. Now the source is kind of fancy because it is coming from a Roon core, which is streaming across the network and into this Roon endpoint that I built myself. But you know, I love the features that you get that come along with that complexity. For me, is totally worth it. So, you know, I spun through a number of different songs that I really enjoy, going back to some of my old favorites. And, you know, I listened to a little bit of Owl City. And if you guys don't know this band, I absolutely love them. They're really, really good. And, you know, the song Fireflies is one of my favorites that I used to demo with. And this amplifier was just, it was great, right? You know, it had that great Class AB sound that you want. Not to say that, you know, Class D is bad, because it absolutely isn't. And, you know, I've looked at some other amplifiers, and I've got some more reviews coming up where I look really, really closely at the Class D stuff, and it is great. But if you're looking specifically for that Class AB spec, this guy is it, right? And it brought that sound quality in spades. Now, another thing to note is that this is THX certified too. Now, in two-channel world, is THX certified a thing? Well, maybe not, but you will find some people that take a two-channel amplifier and put that into a two-channel AV system. And I've actually done that myself upstairs. So I've got a 110-inch screen, one of the ones that raises up, projection screen, ALR, ambient light rejecting, and I'm using a VAVA UST, ultra short throw projector, to project there. Now, that creates issues for a center channel, and in this room, I didn't want to go with the whole full-blown environment, so I just use a left-right there as well. Now, just so you know, I did take this amplifier from my two-channel listening spot up to that AV area that I have set up as two-channel, and that's where this thing kind of took its wings out and really flew. Not that it wasn't cool in a straight two-channel environment, it totally is. But when you want to integrate this with other components that have 12-volt trigger and this kind of stuff, it's even better. So, you know, it turns off and turns on when you turn on your pre-pro and those kinds of things, which is super freaking awesome. And the sound quality, I'll get back to that now, it is great. I mean, you get into a lot of subjective kind of judgments, but the amplifier did everything that I needed it to, right? So it didn't color sound, it had a wonderful sound stage, or it didn't degrade the sound stage that the speakers are capable of. The stereo imaging was awesome. There was depth, there was width, things panned around as you would expect them to, and it just had a great, wonderful sound without other issues that I've experienced from other amplifiers in the past, which come back and eventually impede what your speakers can do. These things really allowed the system to work kind of colorlessly, as broadly and as nicely as it possibly can. So that's my impression of the A2002 from Acurus. It's a great piece of equipment. If you're interested, look up a dealer. They're sold through the channel only. There's no web sales for this kind of thing. And you can get all of that information from their webpage. As always, if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe to the channel. You know, we love subscribers. It's like Christmas for me whenever I see that number tick up one. Also, you know, drop some comments down below if you have experience with Acurus or ARAGON or Indie Audio Labs in general. You know, I've done a lot of work with their home theater products, particularly the Act 4 and the Muse, and they are absolutely stupendous pre-pros. And if you're in that market, you know, I would recommend that you check those out. But if you need a 2-channel amplifier for critical listening, or if you're looking for a 2-channel amplifier to put into an AV system of some kind, I would strongly suggest that you take a look at this and see if this might fit your needs. So with that, we'll call it a video. Thank you so much for your time, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next video.